you? All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, we start a new chapter. So, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law, chapter 6. Ketzas, Dinei Brachos, just a few, right? Laws of blessings. But Deni Baruch Hu, Rukshemoi, and saying Baruch Hu, Rukshemoi. But Amen, and saying Amen. So, exactly what they are, how they are, when we say it, why we say it, we'll explain as we get up to them. So first, let's start with the blessings, the brachas. Now, there's different types of brachas. There's brachas that we say on a mitzvah. Let's say a blessing, you're saying your talus, or lighting menorah, lighting Shabbos candles, putting on tefillin. There's the bracha you say at a mitzvah. There's the bracha that you say for you get some benefit from the world, birchas hanenin. So let's say on food, or you're smelling something nice, various things. And then there's brachas that we say in davening. So they're different, although they're different subcategories, but most of the laws that we're going to have here, or advice, is equally applicable. So the first thing we're going to say is like this. Aleph, number one. Kaidim shavarach eza bracha. Before you say any specific bracha, tzarich ladas eza bracha should tzarich levarach. You're meant to know which bracha you're meant to say. So let's just give a simple scenario. The person has a certain fruit, and they don't know, is this a ha'etz, the fruit of the tree, or is it hadama, fruit of the ground? He doesn't know. And so he's going to start saying the bracha, and he figures someone's going to prompt him when he gets there to the right part. So he'll say Brei Pri, and then he'll wait for the other guys also eating one, listen what they're going to say, and he'll conclude the same way. So we shouldn't do that. We should know what bracha we're making. Now, I will point out there are obviously times where we don't know. Might be someone who doesn't know. Yeah, we have people who are starting out on their journey in Judaism, and perhaps they don't know a blessing, and they wouldn't recognize it even if they were told that this is the blessing. They wouldn't know what to say, and they're saying it word for word after someone. So, wherever we're holding, and as we keep mentioning, Judaism is about the journey, not the destination. And if someone's not up to that yet to know exactly all the blessings and which blessing is what, and they're going to need to be prompted, so that's where they're up to. But once we do get to a point where we are more familiar with the blessings, then we should make sure we know what bracha we're saying before we say it. Why? Why is it so important? Because that way when we say Hashem's name, because generally speaking, all the brachas start off with Baruch Atah and then Hashem's name. And so it's the third word. So when we say Hashem's name, Ikar HaBracha, which is the main part at the end of the day, who are we blessing? We're blessing God. So the mention of God's name is the primary part of the blessing. So ideally, we want to know at the point when we say God's name, Yodei Mashasayim, how are you going to complete the blessing? In other words, what blessing you're actually going to say. That's the key point. Now, after the fact, if you didn't know, you still fulfilled the blessing. But ideally, we want to be able to do things in the ideal way, right? So in halach, we have lechatchila, which means in the first instance, for like a better translation, but it means how we should do things. Then b'diavad means after the fact, did you fill the obligation or how it was and different things. So we want to be the ideal Jews. We want to be lechatchila Jews, not b'diavad, not after the fact Jews. We want to be the try and do everything. Having said that, life doesn't always go smoothly, and we'll often find ourselves in circumstances where the b'diavad after the fact becomes the best thing we can do in those circumstances. Now, so that's number one. Point number one is we should know what blessing we say before we start. So when we say Hashem's name, we know what blessing we're saying. Point number two. You're not allowed to do other things while you're saying the blessing. Now, if I translate it technically, it will say you're not allowed to do anything. And I'll tell you in a moment why I changed the translation a little bit. We're not allowed to do other things because that's disrespectful. I mean, imagine you speak to someone important, and while you're speaking to the this important person, you're polishing your shoes or something. It's really it shows a lack of respect. A lot of time at meetings, people make a point of turning off their phone and putting a face down or something when they speak at meetings, because they're showing that I'm giving my attention to you and I'm not paying attention to other things, as an example. So when we say the blessing, we're speaking to Hashem, and it's not appropriate to be involved in other things while you're giving the blessing to Hashem. Now, as I said, the literal translations, you can't do anything. The reason I changed that slightly is because if it's something that aids the blessing, then you're allowed to. So let's say, for an example, you're holding a siddur. Let's say the blessing on lighting the menorah. So you have a candle, you have the shamash in your hand, and you're reading from a siddur. The Kiddush, Havdalah, we're doing things, but it's part of the Kiddush, the Havdalah. We say blessing on sitzes, so we're gathering the four corners and etc. So something that is part or conducive to the mitzvah, then obviously that's encouraged. But it's other things that are, David.
Yeah, because of health reasons, I've become more conscious of certain things that I'm doing. So I start to feel I don't want to be obsessive, but I start to feel over the last several months that when I'm saying the blessing that we say after the bathroom, Asher Yatzar, after I wash my hands, that I should be standing still. I shouldn't be walking, because it's a distraction of what I'm doing, of what I'm saying the blessing.
That's right. Ideally, yes. Again, when I say ideally, sometimes a person uses a public bathroom and they need to sort of, even once they're outside, it's appropriate to say the blessing straight away, but then you'll need to sort of keep moving a little bit because it's a thoroughfare, move to the side, different things. But in the ideal situation, one's at home, one's in the office, they have their own space. That's right. A person should stand still for blessings. That's right. Thank you for bringing that up, because because it's not just you doing something else. It's that you have to pay attention to something else. Because if a person's walking through the mall, let's say he goes, the place was a kosher restaurant, and he has a nice pastrami corned beef sandwich, some mustard, and I won't get into too many details. I want to make everyone hungry. And he gets up and he's still walking. He walks through the mall as he's benching, saying the grace after meals. Well, he's, even if he's not looking at the stores, he's got to be watching where he's going, and so he's not paying appropriate attention to the blessing that he's making, or she's making. So it's right. It's very important to be where you are when at the time you make the blessing. Now, you shouldn't rush a blessing. One of the downsides of a child growing up in a strong Jewish environment is that a lot of things get taught to the child before they have the maturity to understand it properly. And by the time they're old enough, it's just a second habit. So an example of this is saying blessings. If an adult is learning about it for the first time, they understand the concept. We really have to show appreciation to Hashem. They have a certain maturity that they can appreciate things in their life and not take things for granted, and they can say a blessing with a certain level of feeling. Small child doesn't have that yet, and then sometimes what happens is that by the time they're old enough, they're just used to, before you take a drink, you say blah, 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 and down goes the drink. And we need to avoid that. We need to be able to focus and not to rush. Ideally, the
Rabbi,
person should think about the meaning of the words. Yes.
if you say you shouldn't rush, but when you take the first drink of water in the morning, you have to do it when the water is already almost in your mouth. You
You hold the cup.
Wait between the blessing and the drink.
Yeah, you don't have to hold it here, but you can just hold the cup ready to go. Hold it in your hand, pick it up.
Yeah.
You say the blessing, and then you.
I don't know. I see the rabbi, and he's almost touching the lips with the water right when he's ending the blessing.
Okay, he's ready to go.
Yeah.
That you don't necessarily do that, but
So
even if you do hold it right there,
yeah,
it's still.
Okay. Because
That's
for me, it's difficult to get it up to your lips and finish the blessing.
Yeah. The idea is to hold in your hand, preferably your right hand, as we'll mention.
Yeah.
What you're going to say the blessing on. Like, let's, of course, you're left-handed, then it's. So we shouldn't rush, and we should try and think about the meaning of the words. Now, those of us who are familiar enough with the Hebrew to be able to understand the meaning of the words, so that's straightforward. Even if we're not yet familiar with the meaning of each word, as a step one, we should try and at least understand the meaning of the blessing. So let's say, for example, the blessing of Shehako, right? That it means, blessed is Hashem, King of the universe, who created everything through speech, obviously not like our speech. And then at least if a person thinks, if they don't understand Hashem created it, or whatever blessing happens to be, at least if we understand the theme of the blessing, think about the theme, that's a good stepping stone to then understanding each word. Zeh Loshen Sefer Chassidim. Now, Sefer Chassidim, nothing to do with the Chassidic movement. It's from the Middle Ages. He writes as follows: when a person washes their hand, or he's making a blessing on a fruit, or al mitzvahs, hashgura, called Adam, or on mitzvahs, and which everybody knows. So he's saying a blessing that everyone's familiar with. Person should have in mind the following. You should have in mind that he's blessing Hashem, his creator, that gave him bountiful kindness, Imoy. And he gave him this fruit. Or this piece of bread, lahanlis behem, to have benefit from them, with zival al mitzvah, and he commanded us this mitzvah. I'm just going to interrupt over here. I just want to share a point. I guess I can't speak for everyone, but for most of us, Baruch Hashem, thank God, we've never actually been starving. It's we sometimes use the term, "Oh, I'm starving," but Baruch Hashem, we're not. Think about those people. A friend of mine, I think I mentioned it once before. His grandfather survived in Siberia one Pesach. 9 sugar cubes. He ate 1 sugar cube per day. There was only non-chometz. They gave up bread rations. And he had 2 on Shabbos. Traded everything for the sugar cubes. Now, I'm sure he was starving. Well, people, before even talking about concentration camps, and that there's been times in Jewish history, there's been tremendous poverty, and God forbid, people have actually been starving. Those people appreciate food. When I was a kid, sometimes you'd see at a kiddush, there'd be a Holocaust survivor, and they couldn't stand to leave leftovers, and they'd be putting them in their bag to take home. So as a kid, I won't say you laugh, but I think it's weird. When you get older, you understand. They appreciate food. They can't stand the waste. And fortunately, I'm going to say it's fortunately. I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't have the proper appreciation, but it's fortunate we're in this situation that we take it for granted and we don't really appreciate food as much as we should because we always have food. And Hashem should bless us to stay that way. But we need to try and instill in ourselves a certain appreciation. So we should maybe, so this is the advice he's giving, that you sit and you think that Hashem's given me this item that I can have benefit from, I can enjoy. And don't be like a person who just does things because that's his nature. And he says words without paying any attention to them. We want to avoid that. Now, about this, just saying things or doing things. In this case, saying things, but also applies to doing things without any feeling, without any paying attention to what it actually is. So it annoys Hashem, makes him angry, so to speak. And Hashem told the Navi, the prophet, Yeshayahu, told him like this. He says, because these people approach me, the fear of Sasav Kabduni, with their mouth and their lips, that they honor me. But the heart's far away somewhere else. But Yirasam Oisi. And the respect they show is just like ritual. There's no, it's just like lip service. Mitzvahs anoshim malumda. It's just habituation. Just a person was in the habit of behaving certain ways. So Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu l'Shiyahu. So Kadosh Baruch Hu said to the Navi, Ra'ei Mase B'nai Ki Eino Elul upon him. It says to him, see how the actions of my children, they're external. Just to pause, it's going to keep going, but just to pause the idea, during davening, sometimes our mind wanders. Right? We've shared the joke before that some people, when they take their 3 steps forward, say Shemon Esrei, they should really say Tfilas Haderech, a prayer for travelers, because their mind's going to go all over the world. And when they take their 3 steps back at the end, they should say Goimel, right? The trip you say when you come back from overseas, you cross an ocean. So there was a certain chassid. He had a factory that made galoshes, rubber boots, rain boots. And I don't remember exactly which Rabbi, I think it's Marash or Rabbi Shabbos, one of them. So this chassid, in the middle of his Shemon Esrei, he's a midah, the most important part of davening, his mind got distracted and he was thinking about his business, about his galoshes business. So when he finished his Shemon Esrei, the Rebbe said to him, feet in galoshes I understand, but your head, and but that's what we need to avoid. Sometimes, look, we are human, and another thing just to point out, I believe we also told the story before, but it's important to mention. A chassid once came to the Samach Tzedek one time, and he had some really nasty thoughts during davening, would keep disturbing his davening. So he comes to his rabbi for advice, and he tells him that he has these terrible thoughts during davening. And the Samach Tzedek says, his rabbi says to him, good job, keep it up. So he thought his rabbi didn't hear him. So he says, I said to the rabbi, I have really not nice, bad thoughts. So again, he says to him, good job, keep it up. So he says to the rabbi, says, I'm confused. I told the rabbi I'm having terrible thoughts during davening, and the rabbi tells me to keep it up. So Samach Tzedek explains to him, as mentioned in Tanya and some other holy books, that if there's a parable of 2 people are wrestling, If one person is not trying, then the other person does not try very hard either. As soon as one person really tries to win, then the other person's putting all his effort not to lose. So he says to him, if the Yetzer Hara is investing so much energy into trying to disturb your davening, it must be you're doing a good job. Because if your davening was worthless, you wouldn't have to do anything. All right. So if you're having such terrible thoughts, it's a sign that you're davening well. So just keep doing what you're doing. Keep it up. Keep up the good work, and you'll overcome. That's what he taught him. So, as a matter of fact, it's going to end up happening is that the better our davening is, the more effort we invest, the more we learn, the more distractions are going to come. So having a distraction is not the issue. The question is what happens next. The thought comes to my mind. Do we start thinking about it? Or as soon as we realize our mind has wandered, do we stop ourselves and get back on task? That's the challenge. So I don't want, to depress people when we have, worrying that we're thinking about other things. That happens. That is going to happen. And the better that you daven, the more that's going to happen. But as we said, it's what comes next. It's the same, a person's allowed to have feelings. We're talking about having a Havas Yisrael and treating people with respect and different things. Someone insults, I don't want to say us, God forbid, someone is insulted. Now, hopefully, there are certain people who have such humility that it doesn't bother them the slightest. But you're allowed to be human and have feelings. That's not what the Torah doesn't tell us you can't feel something. What the Torah is telling us is, but what do you do next? Do you turn around and punch the guy in the nose? No. 99.9% of the time, that's not the way to deal with something. I mean, I'm not condoning saying that that is the way to deal with things, but there can be extreme circumstances where unfortunately the only way to protect oneself is in other ways. But usually there's different ways to deal with something. So we're allowed to have feelings. We're allowed to have, thoughts will come to our mind. We will be distracted. The challenge of Judaism is, what do we do with that? That is our test. Avram got tested. Offer up his son. I mean, there must have been certain thoughts that went through his mind. That wasn't, the test wasn't that he shouldn't have one straight thought. The test was in action. What was he going to do about it? Anyway, without getting too sidetracked. Right, so we'll just start the sentence again. It says, I see that the actions, the deeds of the Jewish people, the external, and the people are keeping them the way a person just keeps, like certain customs of his ancestors. They come and to my house, Hashem says, and they pray, they daven, but they pray just like set prayers, without just set like a habit, as a v'loy shalom, but not with a full heart. And a person doesn't necessarily, ideally we should know every word, but a person doesn't have to know every word to daven with a full heart. A person knows they're davening to Hashem, and they think, I'm pouring out my heart to Hashem, I'm requesting. They wash their hands, they say a blessing until and they break their bread, and they say a moitzi, shoisim, and they eat, drink, run, like and all these blessings are just like habit. They're just like the mouth is trained. It's like a good way to sort of think, to get the idea across. We know there's times where we're driving a car, and we drive an autopilot. We're driving, we're speaking to the kids in the back seat, and doing two or three other things as well. Hopefully not, not checking your messages on your phone. You're watching where you're going. But, people are doing different things. All of a sudden, there comes this heavy, big downpour. It's dark. You can't see very that far ahead, and the road's slippery. Then it comes a whole different thing. Also, we have to concentrate on our driving. Right? So something that we're able to do just without thinking, just as in autopilot, it changed into something that we have to concentrate to great extent. And unfortunately, when we get more familiar with our davening and our blessings, it can also be like that driving experience. It can be autopilot. And we're thinking other things, we're doing other things, and the mind's not there, the heart's not there. And that's what we have to try and avoid. Even when they're blessing me, they don't even have an intention to bless me. Shem's complaining to the Navi. Therefore, Hashem got angry, so to speak, and decided to take away the wisdom from those who blessed him without any feeling. It says afterwards, the Chachmas. And so it says, more and the sages will be lost in various things. That's what happened. Therefore, because of all of this, is our sages have warned us. They've told us, they've emphasized the point. And they've told us that we should do things. Right. Person should instead get himself in the habit. Ram to say his blessings in a loud voice. Because a voice makes a person concentrate on what they're saying. All right, so we'll continue tomorrow, God willing. And any questions before we finish up?
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Oh, Ben, you wanted to say something?
No.
Oh, just briefly, two things. Number one, when I first got married, we had a basement apartment by a man in Toronto who was an older chassid, and he taught in the local school. And he taught, the ages of boys that were learning, sitting the whole day and learning Gemara. And he came home one day and he was very upset. He said, these boys sit the entire day learning Gemara, and they forget about Hashem.
Can happen, yeah.
Yeah. And the second thing is, one of the best purchases I ever made. I don't want to do a commercial, but it's I don't know. I think it's a mirror image. You see it. It's the Lubavitch Siddur. It's linear, the linear translation.
Yeah, it helps one know which word is which.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really fantastic because you're able to concentrate. I can look at each. I had a stroke 3 years ago, so I had to sort of relearn all this stuff. So I can look at each line in English, 3 or 4 words, then look at the Hebrew, then do the same thing on the next line, look at the Hebrew. So I'd be able to have an understanding of what I'm saying instead of just bunching everything together.
Excellent.
When I was
the translation is not always accurate.
This is an accurate translation.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's where it's not accurate is that sometimes words don't really have a word in English. Right. But it's as good as you're going to get.
When I was just one more brief thing. When I was in yeshiva, the mashpia there, Rabbi Shalom Ber Beshetsky, Olav Hashem. So he told the story once. This Jew comes to shul and he says to his friends, "I have a bear that knows how to daven." He said, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I have a bear that knows how to daven." He says, "Let's see." So he brings this bear, he takes a siddur, and he puts down the center of the page some honey. And the bear takes the siddur and goes, vroom, 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 the next page. Vroom, 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 vroom. So he was trying to say to them, this is how you guys sound when you're davening. You're just going down, just going down each page. Vroom, 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 vroom.
I can share Rabbi Schwab. Recently, I cut out a 1-minute clip that he did on like YouTube on his shiurim about the way to daven. It's just incredible. With exactly that sound. And I also found just knowing the subject matters. If you know what parts of davening are shevach v'hodah, where you're thanking Hashem, and which parts of davening is asking Hashem, you have a whole different approach to davening. Even
And
just
what
when you're getting to different sections, you just know more about what's going on than, as David just said,
which are praising and which are thanking.
and asking.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, we've gone over time. I don't want to keep people. But have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Have a good one, everybody.
Yashkoach. Thank you.